Well, nowadays you got to have that confidence because people nowadays.
Before we get straight into the podcast, I just want to give a huge shout out to our sponsors, Declan Kirby GAA Star. Declan Kirby GAA Star Championship Journey. It's a series of GAA team children's books written by primary school teacher and GAA coach Michael Egan. You can check it out in the link in the description down below, of course, as well. Follow the trials and tribulations of Declan Kirby and his team at Smithgreen Gaelic Football Club, recently formed but promising GAA team. The book is now available in Easons and all good bookshops, so check it out in the description down below, and let's get straight into it. What's the story, everyone? Welcome back to GAA Fan TV. I hope everyone is keeping wonderfully well. This is the GAA Fan TV podcast. This is the football review show with myself today. I will be flying this solo for a change, so we'll just be myself, so you'll just have to put up with me today for this football review show. And yeah, of course, if you're new around here, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. We do a number of podcast interviews, match reactions, fan reactions, absolutely everything over on GAA Fan TV, both on YouTube and on all podcasting apps as well. And yeah, I'm here today obviously to review the weekend's football action, and there was certainly a lot of talking points, a lot of discussion, and brilliant, first of all, to have the championship back. I mean, after such a long time not having the championship, I know we had the league back, and the league was exceptional, probably arguably the best National Football League campaign we've ever seen, in all honesty. I mean, the action that we seen, the goals, the drama, you know, absolutely everything. You know, you think back to the Monaghan Galway game, the way it went down to the line, it was absolutely brilliant. And will we get that in the championship? It's hard to know. Probably not until the latter stages, maybe semi-finals, you know, provincial finals, stuff like that. So we'll really have to wait until that happens. But ultimately, it was brilliant to have the championship back, and disappointing in some ways by the fact there's no qualifiers. I've said this on other podcasts before as well, you know, not having the qualifiers there. Just very disappointing to see a lot of teams, you know, their championship, their season is over at the weekend. You know, the likes of Down, the likes of Carlow, the likes of Clare, you know, as well, Sligo as well. And, you know, in particular, the likes of Down and Clare, who I think were both disappointing by their own respects in their games. Obviously, Down were beaten very comfortably by Donegals, and Clare were beaten very comfortably by Kerry. But for Down in particular, there was a player on the pitch called Barry O'Hagan of Down, who was very, very impressed by, you know, the way he was moving at different times on the ball, the way he was getting away from different players, creating that extra yard of space for his points. I thought it was exceptional. And, you know, there was a part of me that was quite disappointed when the full-time whistle went, because I was like, you know what, we won't see him in a Down jersey again until 2022. And it's kind of crazy to think that. It really, really is. And, you know, even in the Clare game, the likes of your David Tubridy's, who, you know, people are saying maybe it might be his last ever game in a Clare jersey. Owen Cleary, we won't get to see him again, you know, until next year. It's very disappointing. It really, really is. And I still don't understand why they don't have the qualifiers this year. Like, the All-Ireland final isn't until August 29th. I mean, that's 2 months away. You know what? It's 28th of June today, so it's over 2 months away until the All-Ireland final in Gaelic football. Surely they could have done something. They could have fitted the qualifiers in there. There's a couple of gaps in between. I know they want to get the club championships back and whatnot, but surely we could have had some qualifiers in there. We really, really could have. Also, for those of you who don't follow me over on Instagram, who don't follow GAA Fan TV on Instagram, but for those of you who do, you might have seen a post recently about the Matchpint app. Was very delighted to be asked to create my own GAA prediction league over on the Matchpin app. For those of you who don't know what the Matchpin app is, it's a free app designed for all sporting activities, really, where you can actually predict a lot of the different games that's happening, not just in the GAA but also in rugby, and also of course in Gaelic football, in the Euros of course as well. It's actually a very cool app as well. It even shows like different pubs and, you know, what they'll be shown, like if they're showing different matches at various different pubs and whatnot. So it's actually a very cool app. It isn't a paid sponsorship or anything like that, but they did just reach out to me about creating my own GAA predictions league, and we've actually 5 people in there at the moment, and I'll actually leave a graphic on screen right now so you can actually go and take a look at how the app works. I'm in first position at the moment. We've got Joseph O'Dwyer there in second, John McCarthy in third, Patrick Sharkey in a fourth, and Keane Roberts in a fifth. So I was actually first, I'm first at the moment, but there's only 5 people in there. So if you feel like you can make better predictions than me, which I don't think is that hard to be perfectly honest, feel free to join the league. There's still a chance to join it. You can join the league with the code GFTV. Like I said before, the app is completely free. All you have to do is download the Matchpin app on the Play Store or iOS or Android or whatever device you have. Download the Matchpin app, join the league, and then once you're in the league, you can go and predict your games for the weekend, and then you can actually see the rounds as well. There's even prizes as well, free prizes that are issued at the end of every week and at the end of every month or whatever. So do get over there if you can, and just a bit of crack and whatnot. And even at the end of every week, we'll run through different predictions and we'll see who ends up finishing first at the end of the championship. And I might even issue my own personal prize maybe as well for whoever finishes first. Obviously if I finish first, I'll give it to whoever finishes second, because it would just be a bit weird if I gave myself a prize. But yeah, do get over there, and I'd very much appreciate it. And anyway, back to the podcast. But look, listen, we'll crack on with some of the results. We'll run through some of the talking points, some of the big games, and we'll start with the Ulster Senior Football Championship first of all. Donegal beat down 225 to 112. A very comprehensive 16-point victory for Donegal in this game. And look, listen, I suppose, first of all, from a Donegal point of view, you're delighted to come through this game very comfortably. There were obviously some suggestions, and some people were thinking this game could be a little bit closer, maybe with Down being a Division 2 team and Donegal, kind of with the injuries that they had coming into this game, Michael Murphy, Jamie Brennan, Oisin Gallen, a few other injuries around there as well. There were some suggestions that maybe Down might be able to trouble Donegal just a little bit, because if you think back to when Down played Cavan in the Ulster semi-final last year, they were 9 points up at half-time, I believe, and they had that game within the melting pot. Who knows if Down had won that game, then gone on to an Ulster final. Could Down have done what Cavan done? Who knows? We just never. What am I saying? We would have never known, unfortunately. We will never know. But obviously I did do my live reaction after this game, so if you want to check that out over on GAA Fan TV on YouTube, you can. I gave my live reaction, my instant reaction straight after the game, and ultimately, to be honest, my thoughts between making that video and now really hasn't changed. The talking points really in this game were obviously Michael Murphy starting, first of all, which I was a bit surprised by. I know some people were saying, look, listen, you can't take Down too lightly. You got to show them the respect. You got to give Michael Murphy minutes. You got to give him playing time so he can recover from the injury, get up to full fitness. But I think with a hamstring injury in particular, it's risky starting a player when he's, has he fully recovered yet? I'm not too sure that he has. It's only been 3-4 weeks since that hamstring injury, if not even less. So I thought personally the way to do it would have been to bring Murphy off the bench, with the final 10 to 15 minutes. The intensity of the game wouldn't have been there at that point. Donegal probably would have been 5 or 6 points in front at that stage, and they would have, the game would have been more or less over, and I think it would have been comfortable for Murphy to come on just to get a couple of minutes under the belt, and then maybe start the Derry game and then kick on from there. Now we have a situation where we don't know what the story is with Murphy. He might not be involved in the Derry game at all, and who knows, maybe not even for the rest of the Ulster Championship. Who knows? It is a hamstring injury. He could be back in 3-4 weeks. We'll have to see the extent of the injury. I know Declan Bonner probably didn't want to take too many risks, so that was probably the main reason as to why they took him off. One big positive, though, was the return of Jamie Brennan. Came off the bench, got that goal. Took about 12 steps in the process, but a really well-taken goal. Brilliantly taken finish by Jamie Brennan. And for Down, like what I was saying in the live reaction, for a team that sets up defensively, for a team that has that blanket defence system, to be making the errors that they were making, basic defensive errors that you'd see on the training pitch, in club games all across the country at lower levels, or maybe you wouldn't even see it. A basic kick out, one of the defenders gets caught, Jamie Brennan puts pressure on, Donegal pressed up on Down's kick out, Jamie Brennan lapses onto it. I know he took about 12 steps, but he still got to that ball and still created that chance. And for Down, that was a situation where it shouldn't have happened. And I know people have been saying for a number of years now about Down's problems with their own kick out, and I think it was evident in this game. They were really, really struggling at different times in the game, and Donegal were forcing far too many turnovers. And it's disappointing. And we've seen what Down do have a bit of quality. We've seen in the second half when Caelan Mooney got that goal, they created a number of goal chances. Barry O'Hagan, who I was saying earlier, was exceptional for Down. Really, really impressed with how he played in the game. But there were too many disappointments. Corey Quinn didn't really show up on the day in discipline when Jared McGovern got sent off. So I think from a Down point of view, you'd be very disappointed with that game, because I don't think the gap between Down and Donegal is as big as that, personally. I think Down, Donegal should be beaten down comfortably, but it should be 9 or 10 points. It shouldn't be, 16 points in total on the day. Shouldn't be that amount. It really, really shouldn't. But for Donegal, they move on to Derry. Very excited for that game now. I really, really am. I'll be very interested to see what happens there when that game comes around next weekend. So make sure you do stay tuned for the football preview, or the football preview for next weekend. That will be out in a couple of days' time. I suppose one thing we should discuss is the big margin of victories that we had this weekend in a lot of the games. Mayo beat Sligo by 20 points, which I don't think was a big surprise. And actually, we'll discuss that game in a few minutes. But Sligo, to be fair, actually gave a good display in some ways in this game. Hitting 12 points, and they actually fought and worked hard. And they, for when you look at the kind of the overall big picture, Mayo are top 4, top 3 in the country. Sligo are down at the very bottom. In my football power rankings, for example, I had Sligo in at 30, I had Mayo in at 3. So a 20-point victory for Mayo would have been expected there. But when you look at Kerry versus Clare, for example, Kerry won this game in the end by 17 points. Limerick beat Waterford by 18 points, which was, an extraordinary victory there in many ways. I know Limerick have made massive strides, but 18 points is a huge margin. Considering Limerick are a Division 3 team, and both sides were actually in the same division last year. We had some other kind of big margin of victories, of course, as well. The Donegal Down game, like I mentioned already, the Kerry Clare game, the Mayo Sligo game, and you know what? In terms of the championship at the moment, in terms of the structure, and I know it's a debate that we always seem to discuss, and it is frustrating talking about the structures of the championship, because it feels like it's a debate that's gone on for the past 2 or 3 years without there ever being any changes at all. And I know the COVID situation has disrupted it, and the Tier 2 was meant to come in and it isn't there. But surely now, going into 2022, the GAA need to make changes to the structure of the championship, in my opinion. It's imperative that they make these changes. Otherwise, we are going to lose so many players across the country from a lot of the, lesser counties, if you want to say so, to the likes of Australian football, to other sports. And a lot of players are just going to opt out and not be bothered and just play for their clubs. And in many ways, you can't blame them, because what is the point? What is the point if you're... And I think that's one of the reasons why we also had a lot of big margin of victories. And a common theme throughout a lot of these games as well was that in the final 10 to 15 minutes, the bigger teams, the likes of your Donegals and your Kerrys, got better as the game went on. They brought players off the bench and they pulled away further. And I think another reason for that was also because for your Downs and for your Clares, you're trailing 8 or 9 points going into the final 5 to 10 minutes. Realistically that it's going to take a miracle to turn this around. And you also know that you've nothing else to play for after this game. You've no qualifiers. There's nothing there. There's nothing else to play for. So are you going to take that extra yard? Are you going to take that extra step? Are you going to, press on that kick out? Are you going to listen to your manager's instructions? Maybe you won't, because you know that there's nothing else to play for here. There's nothing else to work for. And I think that's a big issue. I really do. And I think that it even stems for when there is qualifiers. You've 2 games. Maybe if you're one of the lower level counties like your Carlows or your Leitrim, Sligos, you've got 2 games a year in the championship. That's just not good enough in my opinion. And I know the Tier 2 has got mixed issues and a lot of people aren't too happy with it. I think, in my opinion, they have to do something now where they bring it in, or even what Daniel St. Ledger mentioned on my podcast, where he said you have your senior championship, you have your intermediate, and then you have your junior. it has to be ran in a similar way to hurling, in my opinion. It really, really does, because, you know, if hurling was ran the same way football would, we'd have very much the same results. Now, the margin of victories would be bigger because obviously hurling, you know, there's always going to be more scores on average in a hurling game than there is in a football game, just by the nature of the way that sport is played. And, you know, but for example, if you were to have, say, let's say if you were to have your Ulster Senior Hurling Championship every year, Antrim go up against Cavan on the opening day. Antrim would win that by 30 plus points. It's no different to what we've seen in some of the games at the weekend, and to what we will see when Dublin play Wexford next weekend as well, because that will be 20 plus points as well, you know. And it just doesn't do anyone any favours at all. Players are getting injured as well. It's not even doing the big teams any favours at this point as well. So it's something that needs to be changed. And look, I know I'll have a debate about this at some point with some people on the channel again. We'll get some people on, we'll have a proper discussion, and I know a lot of people in the comment section below and have offered their own suggestions. And, you know, the provincial championships don't need to be scrapped. You know, run them at the start of the year as pre-season tournaments, combine the league and championship in whatever way. And then I think we could have a really, really interesting championship. I really, really do. But we'll crack on anyway, and we'll once again kind of move through some of the different games. And Kerry versus Clare, I obviously made a live reaction to that game as well. I suppose just to discuss this game very briefly, I mean, you know, I think in the end, a lot of people didn't expect this game to be as one-sided as it was. I think a lot of people expected Clare to probably bring the same kind of level of fight and determination and heart that they showed in the Mayo game. For example, they scored 2-18 against Mayo, but they only scored 1-11 in this game. And they very much just ran out of steam in this game. They looked a little bit tired. They looked a little bit, once Kerry kind of pulled away and had a 6 to 7 to 8 point lead, Clare just never found the momentum. They needed a goal earlier than they did to really kind of, because in the Mayo game when they got those 2 goals, they really that gave them a lot of confidence. Mayo obviously had Cillian O'Connor go off, and Clare gained a lot of confidence, and they felt like, okay, we're actually within touching distance here. You know, there was 1 point going into the final 4 to 5 minutes in the Mayo game where there was only 3 points in it. Clare never got close to Kerry at all in this game. Kerry came flying out of traps, 5 points without reply. The pass by David Clifford into Sean O'Shea was actually Paddy Clifford, I should say, into Sean O'Shea was, I mean, what a pass that was. To have that vision and awareness was absolutely brilliant. And that's something that Kerry are trying quite a lot in the championship. They tried it in the Dublin game, and it is a tactic that could have some joy against the Dubs later in the year, where, you know, they'll win a ball around midfield or maybe in the half forward line, and they'll quickly look to offload it into the likes of David Clifford, or if it's Killian Spillane in there, or Paul Gainey, or whoever it is up in the full forward line. Sean O'Shea obviously in this instance, and it will create a bit of space. And when you have those situations where you've got 2 or 3 players, 3v3 situations, Kerry are you know, they have the players to be getting goals in them situations, and that's how they get the majority of the goals that they do get. Kerry's bench was another point I wanted to make. I mean, you know, we've seen this with Dublin down the years in the Leinster Championship when they bring players off the bench and they pull away late on. We've seen that. Killian Spillane came off the bench, he had 3 points. Tommy Walsh didn't score, but certainly caused a number of problems. And Micheál Burns got a very well taken goal as well. And it was just, it was comfortable in the end for Kerry. You'd have to feel at this point Kerry will surely win the Munster Championship. Surely they're not going to make the same mistake that they made against Cork, because we know they have the quality. They play Tipperary next, and then obviously Limerick or Cork, which we'll discuss Limerick now in a moment. But surely for Kerry, they're not going to slip up. I feel like the only way they don't win this Munster Championship is if they slip up. But they've come through, arguably, you could say, their toughest test in Munster. I think Cork will put it up to them more. I think Clare just underperformed on the day. And I do think, you know, Cork will give them, or whether it is Cork, because it could easily be Limerick. But Tipperary, they'll have to worry about Conor Sweeney and Mickey Quinlivan and whatnot. But Tipperary are coming on the back of a very poor National League campaign. Kerry, very confident at the moment. You could see Kerry beating them. I mean, this was 17 points, could very much be very similar scoreline in the Tipperary game. It really, really could. We'll move on to Waterford and Limerick. Waterford beaten by Limerick by 18 points. Waterford 12 points. Limerick 4-18. An incredible performance by Limerick here. I mean, this was brilliant stuff from Limerick. And, the strides that they're making in Gaelic football at the moment is very interesting to see, isn't it? And I think next year, with Division 3, they could very well be contenders for promotion. I think they're going to be up there. I really, really do. And it's mad to think that these two were Division 4 teams last year, and Limerick have just breezed past Waterford, and they've gotten better as the season's gone on as well. Like, they even put it up to Derry. They gave Derry arguably their closest game in the entirety of the league. I know Cavan came close enough to Derry. Cavan actually came closer. There was only 2 points in that game. But Limerick gave Derry a very good, close contest, a close battle. And in this game in particular, had it on in the background. I was more focused on the Dublin and Antrim game and hurling that was on at the time. I will be discussing that tomorrow in the hurling review show. But in terms of this game, Limerick, just exceptional. The way they move the ball, so quick on the ball. Players like Hugh Burke and Robbie Burke as well. Hugh Burke scoring 1-6. I actually seen the goal as well. Really well taken goal on his left foot, slotting it past the goalkeeper. It was actually the first score of the game as well. So Limerick really set the tempo early on, getting that goal. Killian Fahy with 1-1, another very, very impressive player. And obviously Ian Corbett at centre back. What a player he is. Scoring 1-2. Was nominated for an All-Star last year. Didn't win an All-Star. Obviously, Limerick didn't play enough games. They only played 2 games in the championship, but nominated for an All-Star, which tells you all you need to know about the quality of Ian Corbett and getting forward. Very, very top-class player. Definitely gets in my GAA team of the week anyway. He was absolutely exceptional. He really, really was. There's no two ways about it there. We'll move on to the Connacht Championship, and Mayo play Sligo. Well, Mayo beat Sligo, obviously, by 20 points. Well, actually, before we get on to the Connacht Championship, I suppose one thing we should discuss, just very briefly, I will discuss this more in the preview show later in the week, but Limerick versus Cork is going to be a very interesting game because, the gap between those two counties, in my opinion, is not as big as we think. I think Cork have the potential to win it by 4 or 5 points, and I would still fancy Cork at this moment in time. But with Cathal O'Mahony injured for Cork, with some of the retirements, Kieran Sheehan has obviously retired recently as well. There's a chance for Limerick. There really, really is. We've seen Limerick nearly beat Tipperary last year. There's a huge opportunity there for Limerick to beat Cork. It's not impossible. It really, really isn't. And, if they could build up a bit of a lead, get men behind the ball, make it difficult for Cork, make it a dogfight, it could be very close. It really, really could. And it's going to be very interesting to see how that game goes. But we'll move on. Like I was saying, Mayo and Sligo. Mayo, 323. Sligo, 12 points. A 20-point victory in the end for Mayo. I know someone in the comment section below in one of my videos was asking what I made of Sligo. I think at the end of the day, what more could you expect from Sligo in this game? They're playing one of the best teams in the country. Sligo have had a numerous amount of retirements in the past couple of years. They've basically got a new squad, new management, and in the COVID situation as well. They didn't even have a championship game last year because of the COVID situation. So always going to be very tough for them. And I think, to be fair to them, I know it's a 20-point victory, but I do think they showed some positive signs in this game. And I don't think it was necessarily the end of the world that they lost by 20 points. I mean, what more could you have really expected here? The likes of Niall Murphy hitting 6 points, for example. Sean Caraboyne with 2 points as well. Mikey Gordon, Liam Gohan as well getting a point. And, for Tony McEntee, it's all about building now for next year. It's all about Division 4 next year. We all knew realistically that Sligo were never going to win this game, so it's not the end of the world. In terms of Mayo, did we learn anything new about Mayo coming into this game? I think there's no debating that they're going to beat. They obviously beat Sligo. They're going to beat Leitrim. They'll probably beat Leitrim by more, in all honesty, given how Leitrim have gone in Division 4. But I think Mayo, the question was coming into this game, would we learn anything new about them? Would we learn anything different about how they play, with the fact that Cillian O'Connor is injured, with some of the other new players that they brought into the team? One thing that stood out for me, Darren McHale scoring 1-5. It's a player that I've mentioned on numerous occasions. Actually, as a matter of fact, I even made a video talking about what Mayo needed to do to potentially win an All-Ireland in 2021. And one of those things was bringing Darren McHale into the team. Now, he isn't the key difference in them winning an All-Ireland. I mean, Cillian O'Connor's injured. Just can't see it happening right now. But he scored 1-5. I know it's against Sligo, but it's big for Darren McHale to come into the team. He was the top scorer in the Mayo Senior Club Championship in 2020 for Knockmore, was a key part of them winning that county title. So he's a player that could very much have an impact for Mayo this year in the championship, and I think he's come into the team. He's taken the opportunity, and he scored 1-5, and I think it was a very well taken goal as well, and obviously getting 5 points, fantastic from Darren McHale, and he could certainly be an option. Aidan O'Shea scoring 2-2. He loves scoring against Sligo, doesn't he? I think his last championship goal was in 2015. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that might have been against Sligo as well. Scored 2-2. Caused so many problems for that Sligo team. And playing in a full forward, too many issues for Sligo. They couldn't deal with Aidan O'Shea at all. Tommy Conroy with 2 points. Ryan O'Donoghue with 5 points as well. And he also had players like James Carr and Fergal Boland coming off the bench as well. Paul Towie coming off the bench as well. So Ryan O'Donoghue played at 15 and Tommy Conroy played at 13. So it will be interesting to see what way James Horan lines up that attack, going into the later rounds of the Connacht Championship, and obviously the potentially an All-Ireland semi-final if they can muster past either Galway or Roscommon, which of course will be interesting to watch as well. We'll move on to the Leinster Championship, and we had a couple of games really here. At least these games now were competitive. We had some close games. Longford were always more or less in front against Carlow, but Offaly and Louth was probably arguably game of the weekend. Very close game, went to extra time. Offaly ended up winning 3-19 to 19 points. So you'd look at that scoreline and you think, Offaly probably won that game quite comfortably. It wasn't the case because it went to extra time. And I rewatched some of the game there just before I made this video. And to be fair to Offaly, like, they were in control, in particular in the first half. They were dominating the play, but Louth were moving the ball quickly, and the likes of Sam Mulroy, Kieran Keenan as well, certainly causing a couple of problems for Offaly, and they always stayed in contention. Anytime you felt that Offaly were going to pull away, Louth were the side that would pull it back. And I suppose for Offaly, another big victory for them. They obviously played 5 games in the league because they got that final against Derry. I was a bit worried for them, in all honesty, coming into this game. Haven't seen them against Derry. Thought they were very poor on the day. They looked jaded. They looked dead on their feet. They looked a bit tired as well in that game in particular. And you were worried with the amount of games that they were playing. Could they come into this game against a Louth side, a Mickey Hart team that are going to fight, that are going to make things difficult, that are going to move the ball quickly on the attack, that are going to be resolute defensively as well. But Offaly passed that test with flying colours, scored 3 goals on the day. Keane Farrell was brilliant in the game with 7 points. Niall McNamee, what a talent. What can you say about Niall McNamee? He is just an exceptional footballer for this Offaly side. Brilliant display, man of the match on the day, scoring 1-3. Brilliant performance. Peter Cunningham and Jordan Hayes in midfield were both very impressive as well. And of course, some of Offaly's bench made a big impact as well, with Bill Carroll getting a point, Owen Carroll getting a point as well. You have Bernard Allen getting the goal, of course, coming off the bench, and Mark Abbott was on the score sheet as well. So fair play to Offaly. They go on to play Kildare. For Louth, they done what they had to do this year. They won they didn't win Division 4, but they obviously got promoted. So they done what they had to do. They'll build now going into Division 3. And I suppose it'll be interesting to see how long Mickey Hart stays at Louth, because is this a long-term thing? Is he going to be there 5 to 10 years? You feel like he'd need to be there at least 4 or 5 years before Louth can really maybe kick on and potentially, cause a shock or two in Leinster. And if they ever do, I don't think they will, but if they are going to, it's going to take a couple of years at least. For Offaly, they march on to Kildare. And we've seen in the Leinster Championship down the years the likes of your Kildares and Meads in particular in the past, and we'll get onto this when we discuss the Longford game. In the past 5 to 10 years, there's been shocks in the Leinster Championship. Carlow beat Kildare, Longford obviously beat Meath, Offaly nearly beat Meath there back in 2019. There are surprises and there are shocks, and you wouldn't rule out Offaly beating a side like Kildare, but Kildare will be coming into the Offaly game with a bit of momentum, obviously getting promoted to Division 1, so you'd have to feel that surely that Kildare would have enough to beat Offaly, but certainly that will be a very interesting game, no doubt about it. Wicklow, they lost to Wexford 2-11 to 14 points. Do you know what? Fair play to Wexford. They deserve a lot of credit because, I was obviously speaking on my podcast when I had John McMahon on from the JMac podcast, and we were discussing the downfall of Wexford, having lost to Waterford and then lost again to Carlow. They were very poor in the Waterford game. There's no two ways about it. Very poor. They should, when you look at, with all due respect to Waterford, Wexford should be beating them. I know Waterford have had a great record against Wexford in recent seasons, but Wexford should be winning that game. There's no two ways about it. There's no doubts about it. And the Carlow game, they had it within their grasp. They started really poorly. They pulled it back. They were leading going into the final few minutes, and John Murphy, the Carlow centre-back, was the hero on the day who won the game. But fair play to them. They got a win against Sligo in the Division 4 Shield. And now they've come out and beat Wicklow. And Wicklow were actually leading throughout the first half as well. And Wicklow were coming in with a lot of momentum, having beaten Cavan. And I think Davy Burke would be quite disappointed, to lose to their local rivals, a team that Wicklow beat twice last year. I think a lot of people would have fancied Wicklow to get the edge in this game. But fair play to Wexford, and you're looking at the likes of Mark Rossiter scoring 1-6. Very impressive player. And even the likes of Sean Nolan in there as well, who I remember watching in the Carlow game, I thought was very impressive as well. Robbie Brooks was another brilliant player in that Carlow game. I think he came off the bench in this game. He didn't even come off the bench at all. So, Wexford changed their team quite a bit to the Carlow game when I watched them last. And Pádraig Hughes got a point as well. And Martin O'Connor, actually, at centre-back, ended up with a goal. And disappointment for Wicklow, who, achieved that big result over Cavan. But I think this, again, puts more things into perspective that fair play to Wicklow, they stay in Division 3. It's a brilliant job for them. I think it's going to be tough for them to stay in Division 3 again next year. And I think for Wexford, they surely have to have their eyes on getting promoted back to Division 3. I know Cavan and Tip will be the obvious favourites there. But personally, I'd worry for Cavan and Tipperary in Division 4. And I think a team like Wexford, if they can keep building momentum under this new management and keep some of the players within their squad, I think they have talent. I really do. And I don't think maybe they're as bad as, there were some talks there that maybe they were the worst team in Ireland. And, personally, haven't seen them lose to Carlow and Waterford, I probably would have put them at 31 of my football power rankings. But I think the victory against Sligo and this victory as well gives them a bit of credibility, and they move on now to Dublin, which unfortunately will be a 20 plus loss, let's be perfectly honest. That's just how it's going to be for Wexford. There's no two ways about it. And like I said before at the start of the video, it's a massive shame that that these counties unfortunately are put in these positions. And as a Dublin fan myself, what are we going to learn? What are we going to see? What's going to be different? And like I said at the start of the video, if you were to do this in hurling, it's very much the equivalent of a Tipperary, going up against a Loud or something like that. In hurling, it's very, very much the equivalent to the two. So for Wexford, look, listen, they'll go into the Dublin game. They'll work hard. They'll try to do what they can. But it's such a hard one to speak about, and you'd be wondering what the Wexford management would be thinking this week going into the game. In all honesty, you really would. But look, listen, fair play to them. They've I think regardless of what happens in the Dublin game, they haven't necessarily turned their season around, because obviously they weren't even in a promotion playoff when realistically they should have been. But I think having beaten Sligo and having beaten Wicklow, there are positives, and they are slightly moving in the right direction. And I do think when the season ends and when the final whistle blows against Dublin and they lose, I think they can hold their heads up high to a certain degree. And it will be interesting to see their approach actually against the Dubs as well, because they've been fairly attacking actually in the games that they have played. And it'll be interesting, surely they're going to get men behind the ball in the Dublin game and try and contain them. I suppose we'll have to see what happens. But Carlow and Longford, the last game to finish up on. I rewatched this game this morning. Fair play to Longford, 25 points. That's a big margin to finish up on. And look, listen, they started the game very, very well. I think Robbie Smith is a serious talent. I mean, what a player he is. Kicks some, has a wand of a left foot in many ways. There was one point in the second half where he got the ball. The ball was played into him. the right corner forward position where he was playing. And he just caught it, turned quickly, put it over the bar instinctively from a very difficult angle. Arguably the point of the weekend as well. So if anyone has a moment, go back and watch that game. I think the point happened, I think it was around the 50th minute or 60th minute or something like that. It was a really, really well taken point. And even in the first half, he was kicking some brilliant points as well. Playing with a lot of confidence. You could tell that by the way he was in this game. Rian Brady was brilliant as well, hit 5 points as well. Donald McElliott was another impressive player who got a point. And obviously big Darren Gallagher in the midfield, winning a lot of the ball, winning a lot of the kickouts, which Carlow did struggle with their kickouts. That was certainly a big problem, and Longford were able to win the majority of the kickouts, in particular in the first half. And Darren Gallagher, getting 4 points from midfield, which I always think is very impressive indeed. And the thing I like about Darren Gallagher as well is he controls the play a lot of the time. And Longford are very patient, to be fair to them. They don't rush chances. They don't shoot from impossible angles. Although Robbie Smith did at one point, and actually it went over the bar. But they're patient. They wait for the right openings, and they have experience in there with the likes of Mickey Quinn as well. So Longford do deserve a lot of credit for getting the victory, and fair play to them. Having seen them against Derry hitting 5 points, you were worried for them. They looked void of ideas. You were kind of worried that Longford had maybe peaked a little bit in 2020, when they were close enough to promotion, and you were kind of worried a little bit for them. Haven't seen them against Derry, but they showed promise against Cavan. They got a draw against Fermanagh, scoring 18 points that day. And very impressive obviously against Tipperary, getting that win. So back-to-back victories. They'll be very confident going into the Meath game. In terms of Carlow, there was a stage at the end of the first half and at the start of the second half where they looked like they were slowly turning the tide. Paul Broderick didn't start. He was injured coming into the game, but he came on right at the end of the first half, and that certainly did give Carlow a bit of impetus in the game. Dara Foley scored 1-4 on the day. Chris Blake with 3 points. Dara Foley actually playing up in the full forward line in this game. And yeah, Paul Broderick, who came off the bench, certainly made an impact, hit 4 points from coming off the bench. So that certainly did make an impact for Carlow. But, Longford were always very much in control of this game. And certainly when they weathered that storm at the start of the second half and started to kick points of their own, they pulled away, and then it really, Carlow made it close-ish towards the end of the game, but Longford were always comfortable, really, and he always felt that Longford would eventually see out Carlow and win this game quite comfortably. For Longford, they go on to Meath, and I'm saying this now, that is a very intriguing game. That's a game I'm definitely gonna watch next weekend. Because look, listen, Meath have injuries at the moment. Meath have a couple of problems. Longford beat Meath a couple of years ago. And the potential is there. There really, really is. And you would be worried watching Longford a couple of times defensively in that game. Carlow did cause a couple of problems. When Carlow ran at Longford, got 2 goals. They caused a couple of problems, had a few more goal chances as well. That's something Longford will need to work on, because that's Meath's biggest threat, is goals. And if Meath can work the ball inside, work it into the full forward line and create that space and get those goal chances, that would be a worry for Longford, because if Meath can get 3 or 4 goals in this game, Meath will win it quite comfortably. The question will be, can Longford pack their own full back line? Can they be defensive? Can they see off that threat of Meath and then pick Meath off in the counter-attack with the likes of Robbie Smith and Rian Brady? And if they can execute that game plan, which is, easier said than done, they have a chance. They really, really do. Longford have a real chance of beating Meath in this game. In my opinion, I think they really, really do. Personally, right now, do I actually think that Longford would beat Meath? Personally, I don't. I'd have to give Meath the benefit of the doubt. Surely, given the progress that Meath have made over the past year, they were very competitive when they were in Division 1. They were never hammered or beaten very comfortably. They were always competitive in every game. Even when they played Dublin in the final game in the National League, well, not the final game, the second final game, second last game, I should say, they were competitive in that game at Parnell Park. So obviously things have tailed off a bit since then. They beat Wicklow and Kildare quite comfortably. We've seen what happened against the Dubs in the Leinster final. Their Division 2 campaign hasn't been great. They just about got past Westmeath, just about edged it, comfortably beat down, lost to Mayo, played a second team. Kildare, they weren't very impressive as well. So look, listen, I'll discuss this game obviously, in the football preview in more detail, but it will be a very interesting game between Longford and Meath. There's no two ways about it. And yeah, that very much wraps up the football preview show, or the football review show, I should say. And look, listen, obviously there weren't a whole lot of talking points in Gaelic football this weekend. There weren't too many competitive games, a lot of one-sided beatings and whatnot. And like what I said before, hopefully the GAA can have more of a look at this and make some changes going into the championship next year, because I think for a lot of people, we're fed up with talking about it. We're fed up with talking about changes and whatnot. But the reality is that the gap between the big teams, and even because you have your big teams, your top 6, your top 7 in the country, and then you have those teams maybe underneath the top 10 who are trying to strive up there. And I'd put the likes of Clare and Down maybe at the bottom of that kind of underneath the top 10, if you like, and Clare up near the top. We've seen that they were both beaten quite comfortably, and yes, they underperformed, and we know they can play better, but certainly it's something they need to look at. Don't scrap the provincial championships. Like I said, provincial championships mean a lot to counties. We've seen Cavan and Tipperary record historic championship wins or provincial wins last year, winning their provincial titles. We've seen Roscommon do it in the past, Sligo, the years when Louth went on to reach a Leinster final. So certainly they'll get rid of the provincial championships, but there has to be something done in terms of giving teams more games and involving them more, and maybe doing a senior, an intermediate and a junior championship, maybe going into 2021. Combine the league with it if you want as well. It has to be done, in my opinion. It really, really does. But look, listen, that will be a debate for another day. And do let me know down in the comments below if you're watching on YouTube. If you're on Spotify or Apple or anything like that, give the podcast a rating as well, so we can push the podcast up in the rankings as well. Do leave a like, subscribe if you haven't already. Have a lovely week ahead. Stay tuned for the football preview show that will be out later in the week. The hurling review show will be out tomorrow, so stay tuned for that as well, and there'll be more podcast interviews coming as always. So my name is Aaron. Have a lovely week, and I'll see you later.